wicked on you. Are you wicked?
Wicked.
You look a bit wicked. Are you a teacher as well?
No. Office manager.
I bet you're a wicked office manager.
Wicked.
Given me one of the thrills of my life. I never thought it would actually happen, but I'd have a minuscule share, but it was just, I can't really come to terms with it.
And it's well deserved to you and all your
co-owners. Just sat there, just doing nothing really.
Good to say you've been joined by a beautiful lady.
It's a man, actually, Derek.
And a very warm welcome to the Bar Stewards Inquiry Sunday Sermon Special. This is the next part of our Racing Greats, where last time we had Richard Pittman, but we're going to better it with this one. I know we will. Joining me and John tonight, it's Sir Bob Cooper. Good evening, Robert.
Good evening, and you can't better old Pitters. I'm sure he was good, wasn't he?
He was absolutely tremendous.
It was really good up until the bit where he suggested that Mark Johnston be on the board of the BHA.
The kilt.
Yes.
The screaming kilt on the board of the BHA. No, that's no good to us.
These people have got lots of opinions, but no solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, that is so very well put, which is why we exist, of course, as a viable, but not totally shit podcast.
It's a pleasure to be with you anyway.
And it's a pleasure to have you on because you've not done many of these. This is not like you could have any presenter and ask him questions or somebody that's been in the game like you have for, this is your 41st year, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I know.
What have you done to deserve this punishment, Robert?
Well, this is a first, actually. I've never done sort of a man's music before. So it's like sort of a Frank Sinatra special, isn't it?
It is. It literally is. I mean, this is the thing. It's going through your life and times in the game.
I did it my way.
And you did it your way. And the interesting thing for me is, I read somewhere a while ago, and it was a while ago. Am I right on this? You started off at Mecca Bookmakers.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, that was my first job in racing. Started off, I was a city slicker. I worked in a stock exchange, which was sort of like betting anyway. It's like a big betting shop. And I was always popping across the road to the betting shop. Anyway, I got made redundant, not surprisingly. Worked for an employment agency, employing accountants of all people, which I have no idea of accountancy at all, apart from turf accountants. I worked in a bookshop and I was very, very happy there for quite a long time, but it was sort of going nowhere. And then a friend of mine sent me an advert from the Sporting Life saying, I said, broadcaster, a sports writer. And I thought, well, I've never done either of those. Anyway, I applied for it. And I think I was the only applicant and I got the job with Mecca.
Wow, that's kind of weird because Richard Pittman, it was the same for him in the fact that he just hung up his boots. And in fact, before he hung up his boots, the BBC were knocking on his door. And he said, well, I'm not sure it's for me, but Richard Pittman took like a duck to water with the same no qualifications in broadcasting or media.
Yeah, he had ridden Pendle before, though.
Well, yeah, that.
I've barely ridden a bicycle.
I know, but what I'm trying to get at is how smooth Richard was, and still is, by the way.
He was really good. I thought he was one of the BBC's best, actually.
Yeah, definitely. But it's the same with you, right? You've brought your unique style over the years from the original at the races right through. And it's a natural talent because the fact is you haven't got the right qualifications to do this, have you?
Well, no, not really. I was talking to someone today saying that on Sky, like on cricket, they're all previous test players. Most of the people on Sky Sports Racing have ridden or done something with horses. I can't think. No, Chapman, of course, has done nothing on horses, but he's probably done something, but nothing that we can talk about. I'm quite lucky as sort of just an enthusiastic amateur, really.
Yeah, I think that served you so well because of your style of broadcasting, and our listeners will know you very, very well because a lot of our listeners are like as old as us and as fed up with the game as we are. So the fact that they can watch you nowadays still being the same Bob, as in it doesn't matter who you've got in front of the mic, they get the same Sir Bob treatment. There's been so many instances where you've either been blanked, you've been criticised when you dared to even go there with a jockey. Just one instance of that was, I can remember Graham Lee at Newcastle.
Oh, yeah. We kissed and made up the other day at Southall, actually.
All right.
It had been lingering for a while, and we did an interview. I think Amanda Parrott, who trained the horse we were talking about at Newcastle, gave him a real bollocking afterwards and said, oh, you're never going to ride for me again. And I think Khalid Abdullah, I think that was probably, maybe he drew his last breath after that. Poor old Khalid. He was very upset, but I'd had some good chats with Graham before, because he's a very good person to talk to. And then we had a chat, Southall, on Get In just before Christmas, I think. We were just saying it was just a bit of fun. We've drawn a line under it now, but I remember that really well. I think it's fun being blank, really.
Yeah, it's as if you go to the races. You know your stuff, by the way. You do know your stuff. Seen this from...
I think that's essential. I think if you're going to have a bit of fun, I think you've got to do a bit of homework.
Yeah, but I do like the fact that a lot of your interviews, it's never scripted. There's no script.
Scripts?
I
think so.
These are the best, aren't they?
I don't know what the people the other side of the microphone feel, but I think they probably quite enjoyed it as well, because otherwise I'll always be asked the same old question. There's only so much you can say about a Class 6 handicap at Wolverhampton, isn't there, really?
Yeah, I mean, another recent one of yours, which, again, it's off the cuff and it's funny. I think it was Luke and Jason in the studio on Get In. You were at Wolverhampton. It was either terrible weather, and they said to you, "What race are you looking forward to tonight, Bob?" And you went, "The 8 o'clock."
Always the last is the best.
It's just brilliant stuff.
But it's really good fun with Luke and Jason. I think the main reason, I think it's quite fun, and quite a lot of people enjoy that evening programme, because I don't think with three of us, there are no sort of egos on the show, really. We just have quite good fun. Luke loves being torn apart. It's great to him. And Weaver as well. Jason doesn't really mind at all. He can take a good joke. I think it's really good chemistry between the three of us, really.
Yeah, it's really interesting because having interviewed Richard, and I was surprised how grounded Richard is, really. I've not really studied him too much in the media, but he loves Luke Harvey for that reason, that he doesn't take himself seriously.
I think Richard did, really.
No, he didn't. I mean, some of the stories on that podcast was quite amusing from his broadcast days. And I think that's what's refreshing. I think it's a good style of broadcast. It's not wooden. It's not there to blow smoke or give cliches out, etc., etc. Your style has always been different, to say the least.
I think it's the actual process of broadcasting. I hadn't really thought of it before, but when I was in my teens, my dad bought a reel-to-reel Grundig tape recorder. It was a fantastic machine. I loved it. And I started making sort of radio programs. The station was called Radio Undertaker.
Brilliant.
Yeah. My brother and I used to play records, and we had a newspaper. So I quite enjoyed the communication game in those days. It was quite fun. And I think that's what I enjoy doing about this, really. I love things, but no, I don't love it when it goes wrong. But it's quite fun when it's live and you don't really know what's going to happen next. I think that's what's fun about it.
Well, another very endearing interview you once did. And again, they put you on the spot. They go straight from the studio. Here's Bob. And you were surrounded by a hen party.
Oh, yeah. It's the last hen party I did, that one. That was the hen party of all. It's the best one I've ever been to.
Yeah. If listeners haven't seen this, it was like a never-ending hen party. There was lots and lots there. And to do that off the cuff, it was incredibly entertaining television.
I really enjoy doing that. When things happen unexpectedly like that, it's quite good fun. I ought to write a book on my great moments at Wolverhampton.
Yeah, and there was one statement at hen party where...
I know what you're going to say now.
I know, it's the one where it was the office manager of the entire hen party. She says, "I'm wicked," and you said, "Yeah, you do look rather wicked."
Yeah, something like that. I remember that. But they've got to enter into the spirit of it as well, because that's what makes it sort of fun on both sides. But it was quite good. And the thing is not to over milk it, really. It's got to have fun, and then it's all over and done with. Yeah. I remember that one really well. I enjoyed that.
As well, on the other side of the coin, things haven't always gone so well. I mean, for example, the sort of embarrassing Ryan Moore moment. I wasn't embarrassed for you. I was embarrassed for Ryan, really, but it was kind of uncomfortable because he was...
I think Ryan Moore loves interviewing him. Actually.
Do you think?
Apparently he quite likes me, but he doesn't really show it very much.
No, but I think he likes that banter with you.
Basically, all his interviews, they're never that revealing, are they? I think he's just a very good jockey, but he's just quite shy and reticent. He never really opens up. He's not like the rest of the family. I think he's quite sort of, in private, he's probably a riot of fun, but he just sort of rather freezes up on an interview. I quite dread, in fact, when I look at the race card and I think Ryan Moore's going to be here and he's riding 4 favourites, I think, oh my God, I don't really enjoy that. Because most of the time he's not going to come out and talk to you about an ordinary race at Lingfield or something.
Yeah, it's a very difficult interview because he will never expand and give you an easy time for a lead question to ask next. It'll be either probably a yes/no answer or, and then you've got to engineer something else.
One I really set up with him, he'd won the art a few years ago. And he was riding at Windsor on the Monday, and I was reporting there. They said, "Oh, you've got to get round more." So I actually had a word with him as he arrived, and he said yes, which I thought was quite good. So at least I set that one up. And then when we actually spoke, unfortunately, we were standing right underneath the public address loudspeaker thing. So in fact, I couldn't really hear what he was saying. He couldn't say what I was saying. So it didn't really work out as I planned. But, you know, he was very willing to do that. He's just a difficult person to deal with, but there's always going to be someone, isn't there?
Indeed. So, Bob, going back to your misspent youth before you got into the mecha job, were you an avid bettor in your teens?
I mean, in racing without betting, I don't think I'd enjoy it really. And I'm only a small punter, but I really enjoy it. I just found out a few moments ago I've gone out of the play spot, but that's nothing new.
You love a play spot.
I love a play spot. I was always keen on betting. I was always encouraged by my father, really. Just sort of small. He used to always do doubles, 5 shilling, 50p doubles and things like that. He used to win. The thing is, winning a lot for a little. I like lucky 15s are quite good because occasionally they come up. I've always been keen, and I was brought up near Chelmsford in Essex, and the betting shop I used to go to, it was a mecca, funnily enough. It was next door to the record shop, so then I could go to the betting shop, try and win something, and then I could buy a record. That would be the perfect day.
This is the perfect lead on for this, Bob. Obviously, you love your records, you love your music. We're doing a sort of Desert Island disc shirt, the next shirt. We want to know what your racing track would be to get you in the mood for going racing.
I don't know. I'm a great Dylan fan. I don't know. A lot of people say I don't like him. Until the CD player broke in my car, broke quite a long time ago because it's got jammed up. I always had a few Dylan CDs, so it's very difficult to choose one track. But I would probably choose something by him or something by a bit more obscure. You probably never heard of Hooray for the Riff Raff, have you?
No.
They're very good. Or Richmond Fontaine. Have you heard of them?
No.
Graham Dench of the Racing Post, quite a keen music fan. And John Best had a horse that needed naming. And Graham Dench and I, we were both fans of this band called Richmond Fontaine, which is fronted by a bloke called Willie Vlautin, who's also a very good novelist as well. He wrote a book called Lean on Pete, and he's mad keen on racing as well. And I emailed him and asked him whether we could name a horse called Richmond Fontaine, and he said yes. And it won first time out, but then it got sold to Hong Kong and had its name changed. So that was the end of that one.
Off to King Kong. Obviously, you're quite a music fanatic. I can gather that. So how did you come into betting? Was it your father?
Oh, definitely my father. Before I could go into a betting shop, I used to give him bets to put on. He probably kept the money because they were often losers. He would pay me out. I remember having a betting shop at home with my brother and taking his bets. And my grandmother, who knew nothing about racing, she looked at the Daily Mail and chose 4 horses, and she landed a Yankee, but we couldn't pay her out. That was the end of that one. So I was underage Welsher.
That's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Like the Kes story where the young chap doesn't put the bet on for his big brother and he buys a portion of fish and chips, Bob. And then, of course, the bet lands and then the brother's running around the village looking for him to kick his ass.
It's a real fatal thing. I remember when I was at school, there was a chap who was quite keen on racing, and he had just a 10p, 2 shilling each way double. The winner of the Lincoln, it was a long time ago, Old Tom, going on to J Trump, which won the Grand National. Even for 10p, it would have been more money than I could possibly dream of. But he let me off for £3.
So what floats your boat? Obviously, we know you like a play spot, but is it small bets for big wins? Is it the old spring double, things like that?
I think they're quite fun. I mean, I've never landed the spring double. I don't think I've ever backed the winner of the Lincoln, actually. Because I keep on trying. It's a difficult race. I quite like an each-way double and a couple of big handicaps. But, I'll have the odd single bet if I really fancy something. Betting can get out of hand, as we're reminded the whole time these days. It's ridiculous. You get the bookies coming on saying betting can be a problem, and they encourage you to go and have a bet. So that's pretty self-defeating, really, isn't it? My dad always said, just never bet more than you can afford to lose. And I think that's probably quite a good motto, really.
Great advice.
I couldn't go through the agony of losing, of really mattering that much. I remember once going to Newbury racing. I'd gone there on a train. I had a Rails account with a credit bookmaker. I think I was on the verge of losing the equivalent of a month's pay. And when I had sort of a double or quits bet, and there was a Reg Akehurst train favourite in a novice hurdle, the last race of the day, and it absolutely bolted in. But I felt really sick afterwards, thinking I'd been so close to losing twice my month's pay. And I thought, I don't want to go through that again. I like the fun of winning, but I don't like the agony of losing, which some people can do that. I'm a gambler, but I'm not stupid.
No.
I'm stupid in many other ways, but not that.
Do you like spotting the underdog? Because
Yes.
that's the thing I garner from a lot of your life doing interviews. You like to spot a trainer that can sort of do the job, but he or she doesn't get the public plaudits.
No,
they
like
probably
Nicky
deserve.
Martin winning the Welsh Grand National, or that fantastic horse, the Real Whacker. I love that horse. Won on Cheltenham on New Year's Day, trained by Paddy Neville, who I'd never really come across that much. He's trained in Ireland, and when he became assistant to Anne Swinbank, he trains at the same place up in North Yorkshire, Leyburn, and he's now got the licence. But he knows what he's doing. Love him to win a Gold Cup, but it probably will run in the Brown Advisory Chase, I think. But I love the smaller trainers winning the big prizes. I think that's the best.
Yeah. Do you get a buzz as well when you're interviewing them on course? Do you get more of a buzz when you've backed it as well?
Oh, yeah, I think I'm probably much more enthusiastic when I've backed it. The worst thing is when you back something that you've been beaten ahead, and when you've got to interview the winner saying, "Oh, well done, that was fantastic," you think, "You dirty rat."
Love it. Absolutely love it. Coming to the type of game then, Bob, that you like best. Are you flat and jumps, or do you prefer a certain type?
I do like jumping. I go not as much as I used to, just go for a day out. I'd rather go to a sort of a humble day's jumping rather than an ordinary day's flat racing.
Yeah.
Well, I think the all-weather is fine. I think that's almost sort of a separate entity altogether. That's a world of its own. If I'm not working, somewhere like Chepstow on the flat in the summer, it's pretty mundane stuff, and it's not that exciting, really. But a small meeting at Chepstow, I go jumping there quite a lot. I think it's always more fun. So I like whatever's there, but I think I prefer jumping.
Yeah. So our listeners can get the feeling of this. When you're doing your stint at the tracks, have you got your play spot on for that evening?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I've done the homework, so I think, well, you might as well put it to the test.
Yeah.
My place plotting last year was absolutely really, really bad. I've had some very good wins. With Jason Weaver once, he always mentions it, and it's now about sort of 7 or 8 years ago. We were working together at Lingfield. I was meant to be at Ascot, and that got called off, so I was with him at Lingfield on the all-weather. And we shared a place pot, and we won. I think we won about 3,500 each. It was amazing. And it was the last leg. We shouted to the jockey. I said, "Whatever you do, just get place." We had a banker in the last, and he was second or third. We were in the money. I remember saying, "I haven't a clue what's won, but I know that Jason and I have won the place pot." It was incredible.
Yeah.
But I usually have some sort of bet, either a lucky 15 or a place pot or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how deep do you take your study into the form?
Yeah, no, I look at it. I mean, especially now, you can look at all the videos and things, which I do now and again, not every time. Some people look at absolutely everything. I don't know what the percentage would be, but so much of it is a lot of luck, isn't there? You can do all your homework right, especially on the flat in say a 6 furlong handicap or something. I love 6 furlong handicaps. If you don't get a run, then you're done, aren't you, really? You need luck.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's sort of lost in this day and age. And John will agree with me on this, that you get into racing because when you spot something and it's in your tracker or it's in your notebook, Bob, and you've been vindicated, it's a big price, it ends up winning, and you think, well, I knew that, I've seen that. And that's what gets everyone going, the betting. And imagine racing without betting.
It would be so boring, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but yet the Kilt, who has been revered, he said we should be selling ice creams or doing something else rather than trying to fund the sport from punters' money. But without punters, there'd be no sport, would there?
Absolutely not. No, I think punters are absolutely vital. That's why racing there are a lot of things wrong with it, like prize money and things. But when you've got day at the races, I remember going with my dad. I lived in Essex, so Newmarket was the nearest. But we used to go to Sandown occasionally, and you hear the noise of the bookmakers, and they just add so much atmosphere. It's just fun. As a child, I think my betting actually probably stems from point-to-pointing. We used to go just for a day out, and bookmakers certainly took money from me, and I was only about 10. Just had just a small bet on, but it gets you interested. And when you back a winner, it was so exciting. And then I think probably that still rings true now. It's just, I find backing a winner now, but you can't beat it. It's as exciting now as it was when I was 6.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving forwards, are you into racing politics? Do you just not?
No, I don't. If I hear anything about any form of politics, whether it's racing politics or politics, although Liz Truss gave us a lot of fun. But racing politics, it's a shambles, really, right? I'm not going to get all political, but BHA is so weak and feeble, isn't it? I mean, you need someone just banging the table and saying, we're going to do this or do something just to do something about it. No one seems to do anything about things that are wrong.
It needs a Barry Hearn, but not Barry Hearn, obviously. But
yeah, it does.
Barry Hearn type person. It does need a dictator for me rather than all this seeking consensus malarkey, because you're never going to get that.
Who's in charge now? Oh, Julie
Harrington.
Yeah, I mean, she's just a very sort of well-meaning geography teacher, isn't she?
Well, a couple of pods back, Bob, I likened her to a shaved monkey that had been kicked through Laura Ashley's.
She won't be a listener, will she?
Not after that, I don't think.
It's not that they're not nice people. It's just that they've got no idea how to. I mean, I'd be useless at being a sort of in front, but you'd need someone reasonably sort of. What's his name? Peter Saville was quite good, wasn't he? He had a few ideas.
Peter Saville, everyone complained about him at the time as well, I can remember. But he actually did a lot more than what the latest incumbent have ever done.
A lot of them just come along and just taken the money, haven't they?
It is. It's take the money, get the pensions, and then move on to another CEO job in another field. It's kind of embarrassing, really. Like, racing deserves better because it needs someone with input and desire and passion.
Having worked for bookmakers with Mecca, bookmakers have always been and still remain quite well run. They're run by businessmen who have to make money for their shareholders, etc. And they're so much ahead of the game as far as, they're always one step ahead of BHA and all the other bodies.
Indeed, and that's possibly where we need a little bit of fight back in terms of where they are taking the game. I mean, in January, we did a pod regarding the South African guy, Greg Bortz, that transformed fortunes of South African racing, and that was less fixtures, it was increased prize money, and it actually increased turnover, Bob.
There's too much racing, isn't it? I mean, I'm shooting myself in the foot because they keep on putting on these extra meetings. I'm going to Wolverhampton this week. It's an extra meeting on. Why? What's the point? For the bookmakers, isn't it?
Exactly, to keep the betting shops open and obviously try and keep turnover high. I get that angle, but it's not the right angle because, as we know, punters have only got so much money in their pockets.
It's probably wrong. And prize money, Ascot starts saying, oh, well, the prize money at Royal Ascot's going to be whatever it is, zillion. It doesn't make any difference. If it was half what it was now, you'd still get the people who are winning wouldn't really notice, I don't think.
Indeed.
They're not doing it for the money. Whereas if you give a bit more to the all-weather, right down to the bottom thing, but I think the middle tier of racing needs a bit more money, which you could take from the top lot. I don't know. Yeah. That's what I'd do.
Indeed. That's enough political for this year. That's for our Sunday sermons normally.
That took us we had 10 minutes on politics.
I know, and you said I don't do politics.
It set me off, Bob, when you mentioned Liz Truss. She often gets a favourable mention.
That would be in John Lang's dungeon.
A lot of men very excited.
Yes, absolutely. Good old Liz. I know. What a shame her 10-year lasted that long anyway.
I know.
Bob, so coming back to your career, and who were the best people you've worked with that you've enjoyed working with? I'm not going to ask the other side because it's not fair. I want to know the best people that you've worked with and enjoyed it.
Well, currently, I mean, just over the years.
For your timeline, who you've really enjoyed working with.
Well, Richard Pittman, you mentioned him. I didn't work a lot alongside him. Luke, I've worked a lot with him, and he's very good fun because I think we have the same sort of attitude, really. Yeah. And he's very good fun to work with. I've got to give you a longer list, haven't I? No, there are quite a few, but Luke would definitely be one of them. Jason's very good to work with. Most of the people I work with, I'm not that in the management. Funny enough, my boss, I haven't spoken to him for 5 years. So either it's true. It's absolutely true that. How long's Sky Sports Racing been going for? I think it's 4 years or maybe 5. I don't know. But anyway, never been keen on, I think, management. Anyone you've ever worked for. The only person I really admire who I worked for was my boss at Mecca Bookmakers, a chap called Bill Hogwood. And he was one of, in fact, if it wasn't for the top guns at Mecca, I don't think SIS would have ever started, actually, because Bobby Green, who was the head of Mecca, and Bill Hogwood, who employed me, and he was sort of his number two, he had completely sort of wild things you think, oh, that will never happen. He made the impossible happen, and he was a very, very good man. And if you did good work, he might give you sort of, a couple of days bonus or something. Unnecessary, one didn't need that, but he rewarded good work, and I think that's very, very rare with management these days. Very rare.
No, very good. Absolutely. Bob, How do you see racing these days to how it was? Are you like us moaning old buggers that sit there on a podcast every week and moan? I mean,
I don't know whether is it because we're getting older and we've been seeing it a lot, but you think, oh, it's not as much fun as it used to be. But I think before I worked in racing, I used to go with some friends. We used to go every Saturday to the London tracks or Newbury or Cheltenham or, anywhere really, Wincanton, down in the south, and just as a day's punting. And I don't know whether people still do that, actually. I don't think they do. They keep on trying to attract this young audience, but I don't know whether there is this young audience going there. Whenever you see pictures on the TV, I think they just must find some people who are under 25 or something. But I think it's afraid that the people who go racing, the real regulars, they are sort of old dodderers, really, which is they enjoy it, but there's very little young blood coming through. I think you've got so many alternatives now, haven't you? And probably there weren't that many other things to do back in the day. But I think it probably was more fun because there was less of it. You got to know more of the horses and you got more involved. And there was nothing like it. Before I ever worked in racing, I used to sometimes speak to the trainer. You think, I've spoken to Nicky Henderson or, whoever it was. People have always been very approachable, I think, in racing. Racing people have. I just don't think it's as much fun as it used to be.
No. Is this you on purpose now with the graveyard shifts at Wolverhampton, Newcastle? Is this you choosing that or?
No, it's not. No, I think probably they use a bit of glamour for the big meetings. And I don't really mind. I've fronted it at Ascot and other,
Yes, of course.
Some of our other big tracks. I'm trying to think what they are, really. Brighton, some sort of place. And I'm really happy going to Wolverhampton. I don't mind at all. In fact, I really enjoy. You see the same people, and it is so friendly when you go there because it's in a pretty downbeat part of the world, Wolverhampton. It's got very little charm to it geographically, but when you get there, there's every time I know for sure you'll get a really good welcome. Everyone's friendly. The punters, you see the same old people there every day. It's great. And that sort of reminds me of the old days of racing. But I don't think the bigger meetings, they've become, I think corporate hospitality obviously got people through the gates, but I think it took away a lot of the fun.
Yeah. So basically, right, this is can I say autumn? I don't want to insult you. Because
No, I'd say winter.
Is this now the winter of the
winter
career?
Of my discontent and my career?
Yeah.
No, it is.
Autumn, twilight, winter.
I keep on thinking, I'll do one more year, and I'm thinking, this will be my last one because you've got to pack up sometime. But whenever it is, it won't be that long.
It will be a very, very sad day when that occurs.
Well, the thing is, we don't get paid an enormous amount of money, whatever you think. But when I was just ordinary going punting with friends of mine, to think that you could be paid for going racing would be one's wildest dream. So therefore, going to Wolverhampton, I'm being paid to go there. What's not to like? I think it's fantastic. So that's what I really enjoy about it.
No, you are certainly one of the greats of the broadcasting era in terms of delivering a rather different product to what you'd normally get from the broadcasters that are around now. And that's not to disrespect the broadcasters that are around now. It's just that you have a unique style about you and always have. And that's what I think an old hat like me and John would miss when that stops, because when it finishes, you don't realise it when it's gone. And I'm sure back in the day, if we had social media for BBC Racing, we'd have all been like slagging jug ears off Julian Wilson and we'd have all been giving it royal. But the broadcasting quality they had back in the day...
It was good, wasn't it, really?
Yes.
It was really enjoyable.
Yes.
And Jimmy Lindley and the paddock and everything.
Yeah,
like
the lovely hands, yeah.
Yeah, and gives him a pat for a bit of reinsurance. That was one of his good lines.
Yeah.
Oh, Jimmy, he was a charming man. He died, was it last year?
Yeah.
And meeting these people, because I remember years, and when I was very, very young, my dad did an each-way double in the 1,000 and the 2,000 guineas. He was a great fan of Jeremy Trees, and Jimmy Lindley rode for him. And he did an each-way double. The first one won at 33-1, and the second one was, I think it was about 50-1, but it was an odds-on favourite, and it finished second. But he had a really good each-way double. Jimmy Lindley rode both of them. And whenever I saw Jimmy, I used to remind him of saying, you were a great hero of my dad's. Like Bruce Raymond, my dad used to always back his horses and go up and tell him, I say, you are my dad's favourite jockey. Darrell Holland was another one. He was those three. in different eras. Jimmy Lindley, Bruce Raymond, and Darrell Holland.
Darrell Holland, yeah. I can remember Darrell Holland at Lingfield, and he used to ride them to sleep on the all-weather. Basically, it was
good jockey.
It was the winter jockeys that had been, and Darrell Holland had took the winter off, or most of it, and then he'd come back in February, and then he'd come to Lingfield, and he'd just absolutely turn a race on its head. He'd know how to just beat them. He'd use the slingshot, he'd come down the outside, he'd quicken up down the false straight, and then that'd be it. And he did. He was good to watch. I mean, Darrell Holland,
like Adam Kirby, when he was riding all those winners at Lingfield, he was
the same tactics, yeah.
Kicking off the home bend, he was fantastic.
Yeah. I think if Adam Kirby had been lighter, we would have remembered Adam Kirby say it.
I agree.
He's just obviously his weight. That's the thing. It's very tough for jockeys. If you can't do sort of 8.7 or 8.6, you're limiting your chances of a lot of winners.
And they've done away with Saunders as well, which is probably a good thing. But I mean, I think probably, someone like Adam Kirby was just perpetually starving. It was just really awful. You've got to be so dedicated, haven't you?
Indeed.
There are we shoveling down a meat pie and Luke would have 3 pints of cider before the first race.
Yeah, good old Luke Harvey. I remember his days of riding. Less said, the better. Anyway, moving on now, a fun part of the show. And obviously, Bob's been in racing a long time. And I just wanted to show some great Bob Cooper moments, really. Yeah, good.
This won't take long, will it?
Now, 4 or 5 here. This is really good. Right, so Bob, one of my favourite memories, and I wish I'd have put this on record. You know when you press Sky Record and you think, I've got this for life?
I've never thought that.
I know this is how sad I am, but anyway, the Graham Lee interview at Newcastle, that was fabulous. Because what would be the current Sky presenters have done? They'd have blown smoke up the winner, etc., etc. What did you do to Graham Lee that evening at Newcastle?
I think he knew that we'd had a bit of fun before. He thought he'd act a little bit chippy, like he came across. But I think he came across as too chippy. And I thought for a moment he was being serious. I don't think he was being that serious. He said something like, "Oh, so you think I left it too late?" Which he did. It wasn't a brilliant ride. He won, but it wasn't a...
Yeah.
No, it was shit. Bob, it was shit. Speaking from a full-time punter, it was shit. It was a shit ride.
Yeah.
You were right. The amazing thing was you actually came from the punter's angle of, well, Graham, you got there a bit late. And to see his stern face, he was absolutely perplexed by
which probably meant, but he knew, but he nearly made a mess of it.
Yeah, because obviously jockeys are thinking, well, this doesn't look good on TV, and I'm being told I've nearly made a mess of this. So Graham, he really gave Bob the cold shoulder, really, throughout the interview and stormed off. And I think, Bob, throughout that's why we sort of love you as a broadcaster, because you do that sometimes, not all the time, and it puts the cat amongst the pigeons, and it's great to see. So that's one of my favourite moments of Bob Cooper.
Good. Well, yeah, it was one of mine, actually, funny enough. Yeah. It was very enjoyable to do.
The other one is more obvious, which we'll class now, which most listeners will probably have seen or listened to, which was the Derek Thompson moment on At the Races. Derek's in the studio, a nice, comfortable studio, as always. Derek says, "Oh, we're going over to Bob Cooper." And he goes, "Bob," he says, "I've seen you've got a pretty girl with you as well." And then there was this...
actually, Derek.
Yeah, there was this 3-second pause. The thing is, it's the delivery. As we say about comedians and everything else, it's the delivery. And there was this 3-second pause, and it zoomed in on your face and the chap that was stood next to you, and you just said without expression, "It's a man, actually." Derek. Again, you go to the grave with racing people, because that was like just thunderous laughing.
I don't know how that resurfaced, because it was quite a long time ago. And I was working where I'm sitting right now, actually, and someone texted me. They just sent me the clip, and I thought, I remembered it really well. I remember it was quite enjoyable at the time, because it's always good winding up Tomo, isn't it? I think someone must have just been going through the old clips, and they did that, and it suddenly went completely viral. Steve Coogan was on Graham Norton's show. It was down as, what was the character he played?
Alan Partridge.
Yeah.
It was an Alan Partridge moment, wasn't it? It was meant to be a vintage. I think it won the prize of the Alan Partridge moment of the year. But Graham Norton played that clip on his show in front of Steve Coogan, which was unbelievable. I must say, I have got that. That is fame. That is. And he laughed. I didn't know whether he was just sort of acting, but it was extraordinary, that, really. And as for the chap I was talking to, the clerk of the course, he had no idea. He thought I was completely barking mad. He had no idea. And funny enough, he didn't last him a job very long.
No, it was a phenomenal moment in TV broadcasting. Right, another one now. This is one of my favourites that's less obvious, right? It was the Barney Curley moment with Big Mac and Harvey. And to see you loitering in the background, and you were earwigging. Well,
I was creeping in, wasn't I?
To see you creep into the scene.
That was at Folkestone, and I wasn't there reporting, but I was there. We were doing a special on the actual racecourse. In fact, a lot of you that did because they closed it down soon afterwards.
I know, terrible.
I know. I used to love Folkestone. Anyway, he was on my hit list, Barney Curley, because he'd had a winner or two, and I used to get on quite well with him. Actually, I thought he would have done it until that moment, and I was just creeping along. I suddenly heard this familiar voice. I heard McCrick at high volume. I heard Luke almost crying, and when I heard Barney, and I thought, I've got to listen to this. I was there to talk to Barney Curley, but I definitely didn't dare go up to him afterwards.
No, I mean, Bob, do you think like racing misses Big Mac more than we'd care to
I tell you,
admit?
He was a really, really good person to work with. People said, oh, he was very rude, and he had his faults, but he was a very supportive person to work with. He would be on my list of one of the best people, and he was always, if someone had done something good, he'd say, well done. Funnily enough, he never really hogged the limelight on at the races. He was a very good man. I miss him a lot, and it was very sad to see him going downhill because he was obviously not at all well for quite a long time. But
no.
He was great, and I think Chapman probably thinks he's trying to fill his shoes, but I don't think he's in a different league, really, McCrick. That's my opinion.
I mean, look, Matt Chapman, this is my view personally, he's a very good broadcaster.
He does some very, very, very good interviews. I mean, if
he does.
If you've got to ask for difficult questions, but I would never dare do it. He's your man. He's very good. Very, very good.
He is, but, well, no, I'm not going to go negative on this year because we're all happy chappies, but it's just a case, like you just highlighted there, Bob, in terms of it's as if like Matt sometimes has tried or in the past to try and fill the boots of Big Mac in the betting ring and when they've had him on, and he just can't.
Eric knew everything about betting. He was a very bright man, and he was a very good journalist as well. He was a sort of investigative reporter for the Sporting Life. He would do something on the Rochester coup many, many years ago.
Yeah.
But he was a very good writer. He was a very bright man. And he knew everything about betting, which is a pretty hard thing to do, really. I mean, he was very good. But that was in the days of tic-tac. And I think bookmaking has changed a lot in the last 20 years or so.
Indeed, the scandalous status quo right now where no one can get a bet on, I think it's going to harm the industry. And
it's unbelievable. I've only got my own little story because my brother, I've got a younger brother, 4 years younger. We were brought up in the same environment, but he never really took to racing. But now he's mad keen, and he likes backing jockeys, and he liked betting with one bookmaker, and he did a lucky 15 on Safi Osborne during the Racing League when she had 3 enormous prize winners, and for 50p or a pound lucky 15 he won sort of 4.5 grand. And when he tried to do the same bet the next day, his maximum bet was 32 pence. That's all they'd let him have.
It's so sad. It's sad the way the game's gone, because I, probably like you, Bob, from that era, we were brought into the game with, you could dream that you could win a fortune if you got it right. If you studied hard or found the right systems or algorithms, you could potentially win a fortune out of this game. But now they've killed that, haven't they? They've gone down a different route. It's kind of, no, you can't win fortunes. It's gone a sour way, hasn't it?
I think it has. I've never been in that league of betting big. I think if you're having a big bet, I think cash with the bookmakers on the track is the only way to do it really these days.
It is. I think that's the future. I think that's what will happen. I think that is literally, when this white paper comes out, I do believe that eventually will play out, that online betting will be finished for most people.
And the affordability thing is ridiculous, isn't it?
It's ludicrous. People like Joe Beavers, I can remember having a bet on him to win Sky Poker's Poker Million on TV. And even Joe Beavers has had his accounts terminated by Betfair and Smarkets, a chap that's got a proven history. And he even produced documents that said, a stockbroker's statement that said he got 6 figures in an account, and you can't bet. It's kind of very strange.
And what's going to happen with that? Is that going to be the future? Is that going to happen or not?
I worry. I worry for the future of the sport. But like you highlighted it earlier in the pod, where you said about the weakness of leadership in the BHA, and I think that's the problem. I think if we'd got a stronger leader that would have cared more for the sport and the punters and thought, hang on, this is going really wrong. But they've done nothing, and they've let it get to this stage where it's too late now to do anything. Whatever's decided in the white paper, it's bad for business. So
yeah, I know. I mean, betting, like a lot of other things, can be an addiction. People can lose an awful lot of money, and it can cause a lot of misery. But that's always been the way, hasn't it? Really,
it has. Gamblers Anonymous has always been around since the dawn of time. There's nothing really different now, other than that bookmakers have generally took advantage of people that are vulnerable in an online scenario in casinos and slots, where you can do a lot of money in a short space of time.
That is terrifying, isn't it? I think the slots are really, really scares me. I have no interest in that sort of form of gambling at all. But there used to be, in fact, they've just closed down the betting shop in Chipping Norton here. There was a Betfred, and apparently it's gone. I'm not surprised, because, I last went there about 2 months ago, so a lot of people do the same. People don't go to the betting shops anymore. But when I went, all you could hear is the non-stop ringing of the machine, people just shoveling money in.
Indeed. That's the cancer of the industry, really, the slots. If they'd have stuck to horses and sports, we'd have all had a lot of fun, but they haven't. They've gone down the greedy route. It's sad to say. I don't know what the future is for the sport. It ain't good. But to finish on a lighter note, Bob.
Oh, good.
You loved Norma.
I'm glad we've mentioned Norma. I wasn't thinking of my modern day Norma is Tracy Waggett. I think she's a really good trainer. She had that horse that won the Great St Wilfrid called Intrepid something or other. No, Norma was great. Norma was fantastic. And she was such a character. She'd rather remind me of Les Dawson in a way. She had that sort of... She had that sort of gruff look, but she had a heart of gold underneath, and she had a very good wit as well. She was marvelous. And she was a darn good trainer as well. Very good. The heroes are the people who are training these moderate horses to win races. If I had some of the top horses, I'm thinking I could win a race, but I think winning races with really moderate horses is a real skill, and she had that in trumps. She was fantastic. I sent her a Valentine's card once. I never let on, but I think she must have got it because I sent it to the right address. It was my birthday. I don't know how she knew, but she knew. And when I arrived at Southall one day, there was a bottle of cognac by the microphone. She just left it there as a present.
Oh, wow.
She was wonderful. She was a real character.
That came out on screen, didn't it? You and her. That was so natural. When you interviewed Norma, it was brilliant.
And she quite enjoyed it, I think, didn't she? She had a real twinkle in her eye. Really.
Yeah, she wanted you, Bob.
Those fantastic eyebrows she had. Oh, we need more people like her. Really.
Absolutely.
There are a few. There are quite a few. I think the small trainers, that gives me encouragement for the future, optimism about the future, because people who've got 20 or 30 horses, it really matters. And it's hard making a living for them, I imagine, at the moment. Yeah. But I think they're the real heroes, and there are quite a few around, and you see them a lot at Wolverhamptons and Newcastles and pure weather tracks.
Yeah, and of course, big Gary Wiltshire was it My Odds with Norma?
Yeah, I remember I wrote a piece about when Norma died, and I rang up Gary to get a quote from him, and he said when he heard he was in the car, and he just pulled into the side, and he just cried his eyes out. He was, he really missed. She had that sort of effect on people. She was great. And Ron Harris, who trains, he trained for her purely because she had some runners at Southall. She always drove the horse box right to the end, and she was having trouble reversing. And then Ron got in and did turn the lorry round for her. And she sent him 3 or 4 horses on the back of that when she stopped training.
Oh, such nice stories. And that was a great time for you as a broadcaster, because I think that was it. You felt that on television. That was the beauty of it. It came through on the screens.
We need another one, don't we? Maybe I ought to write a book saying Looking for Norma.
Yeah, that's the title, Looking for Norma. Yeah, absolutely, Bob. Right, to finish the show then, Bob, because this has been a tremendous show. Love this. There's 2 things I want to ask you. First things first, I want to know your favourite, 1 or 2 race courses. Even though I'm from York, and I do love York, I do love Goodwood. But if you could go racing as your final visit, what would it be?
I think I'd go to the Newmarket July course, Newmarket July meeting. My dad used to take me there, and then I used to take him. And we used to go every year religiously. And I still carry on. And my brother, who lives in Norfolk, he still goes. He goes for the 3 days, and sometimes I join him for a day there if I'm not doing anything else.
Yeah.
And I think it's still got that atmosphere. There's those the pre-parade ring with the trees there. Have you been to?
Yes.
It's still got the magic it always had, and I can imagine it just brings back loads of happy memories. So I'd definitely say the Newmarket July meeting.
Okay, that's a good answer. Okay, to finish the show then, I'm sure our listeners would want to know, because you obviously follow the game very closely, I'd like two things from you. A horse to follow going into this spring campaign. It does have to be a Cheltenham winner, just something you've got your eye on, and a trainer that you like to follow at the moment, an under-the-radar trainer that you're admiring at the moment.
I think the one I talked about a bit earlier, the Real Whacker, I think it runs in the Brown Advisory. I was having a look at that. It's a race where trainers will have all the Willie Mullinses and all those people. They have about 3 or 4 other engagements, and it might just cut up a bit. And the Real Whacker, I think, he's only had 2 races over fences. He beat Monmerle of Paul Nicholls last time, beat it hollow. And I just think it's 8-1 at the moment. So that would be my only Cheltenham bet at the moment.
Good stuff.
Market at Cheltenham, that's definitely not like it used to be, is it?
No. It's disappointing, isn't it? They've gone on running a bet very early. You look at the prices and think, well, I'll get bigger than that on the day.
You probably will, yeah.
Yeah, on most horses.
Part of the fun was nicking a good price, trying back something at 33-1 when you find it's a non-runner or something. But occasionally it pays off, and I think that's also the fun of having a really good value bet. Is there's nothing like that, is that?
No, again, it's adrenaline, and the bookmakers seem to think everyone wants non-runner no bet when we don't. It literally is, we want proper odds for different markets, but we're not getting that anymore, and it's sad to see.
And what you were saying with trainers, again, just under the top there, I was thinking earlier on, someone like Michael Dodds, he's got some really good horses. He's won the Nunthorpe twice, Mecca's Angel, Mab's Cross, really good trainer. And also, I've only got a mini of involvement of ownership with a flat one with Johnny Portman. I think he's quite a shrewd trainer, is Johnny Portman, with his sort of quite humble fare. He's a good trainer. And Alex Hales over the jumps is pretty good as well. I'm sure Gosden and all the Charlie Appleby and people are brilliant trainers, but they have very good horses. But I'm much more interested in the smaller man winning the big prizes.
Right, poor Johnny Portman. He had his car stolen, didn't he, at Windsor a bit back?
He did. I think was it Windsor or Bath? I think it was Windsor.
Windsor, I think.
We leased a horse called Mild Illusion, and she cost £1,000 as a yearling. And she won the listed Bosra Sham Stakes. We only leased her, so we got a bit of the prize money. I never thought I'd ever get any pleasure from owning a horse, because I think it's just money down the drain, which it probably largely is, really. But to be involved with a winner like that, that was really magical, that.
Bob, are you involved in any syndicates at the moment?
No, it's just a syndicate consisting of old boys of my school. I went to a very posh school, of course, along with some other trainers, with people like James Fanshawe went there. But anyway, Johnny Portman has done us well. And we've had the Old Stoic Racing Club, it's called. And we've had Mild Illusion was very good. We've done pretty well. We had a Grade 2 winner over jumps, Bourbon Beauty for Alex Hales. So it's been quite fun. Little outlay, hasn't cost a bomb, and it's been quite a lot of fun. But I could almost do without ownership. I had my arm twisted for that. I prefer being so good-natured, prefer to share the joy of others, really. Even if someone's winning a miserable Class 6 handicap at Wolverhampton, worth virtually nothing, or a classified, they're absolutely thrilled at winning. It's just winning means such a lot, and I think when you see it at that level, it makes it all worthwhile, really.
Fabulous. What a great way to end it. This has been a fabulous hour or so with Sir Robert Cooper. He doesn't do many of these because he doesn't want the limelight.
I'm sure Pittman was better, wasn't he?
Pittman's, I don't know, producer, what was we saying? She's gone 50-50 there. So
that's good enough for me.
Yeah, you're competing, Robert.
I'd have gone 90-10 myself.
That was good. I can tell you something now, though. The producer says, she's younger than me. She said, I wish Bob Cooper was my granddad.
Well, that's a very nice thing to say. Thank you very much.
This has been a splendid interview. So we're back with the next show with the Desert Island Disc episode of racing tracks that you'd love and betting stories. So that's following Richard Pittman, going on to Bob Cooper. And then what a February set of podcasts we're giving here. Thank you to Robert Cooper and John Lang. That's all from us. Bye for now.